I will be explaining the shape of titration curves and how to know from the shape whether we have a titration of a strong acid or strong base with a strong base or a strong acid. And also from the shape we can determine if we have a weak uh, acid or a weak base being titrated. So first let's look at the first titration curve. Here the curve, first of all, starts from below 7. So this curve starts from below 7. So we are dealing with a titration of an acid with a base. When the curve starts from above 7, like if we look here, it starts from above 7, we are looking at a titration of a base with acid. So I'm going to write here I have a titration of acid with a base, and on this side I have a titration of base with an acid. Now from the shape of the titration, from the equivalence point, I can know whether the acid that we have is strong or weak, or here in this curve I can know if the base that we have is strong or weak. Let's always consider that the titrant, what we are titrating with, whether it's a base or an acid, is always strong. So let's begin. Here, there are two important points to compare. How the curve starts and from which point. If the curve starts below a pH of 2, so below pH of 2, most probably 1 or something. So you have, keep in mind that what you have is a strong acid. You are titrating as a strong acid. Now, if the pH starts above pH of 2, like for example here, we are basically titrating a weak acid. That's first. Second, how the curve line starts. Is it almost a straight line or there's a slight jump? So when there's a slight jump, we are dealing with a weak, titrating a weak acid, so it will be a weak. There's a slight jump at the beginning of the curve. If the curve has no jump and it increases slightly every time you are adding a base, then definitely this is a curve of a strong acid. So no jump at start, and the curve increase slowly. It looks like a straight, almost a straight horizontal line. Almost a horizontal line. Now, we need to look at the equivalence point. When I have a strong with a strong, the equivalence point is always at 7. There is no other options. So, a strong acid with a strong base, pH at equivalence is always equal to 7, not a different value. But if we have a weak with a strong, the pH is not equal to 7. So let's look over here. It's a weak acid. The pH at equivalence point is above 7. So pH at equivalence above 7. So, I repeat, when we have two curves and when we have a titration curve, we need to look where the curve starts. Is it starting from above or below 2 to determine if it's a strong or a weak acid that we are titrating, or if it's a strong or a weak base that we are titrating. So you look, is it starting from above 12 or below 12? So this one it's like 13, this one is like 11. This will identify whether it's a strong or weak. Second, is it going almost a straight line, increasing line, or there is a jump? So here again, is there a slight drop or it's going as a straight line? Because if there is a slight drop or slight jump, then we are dealing with a weak substance. And the third thing, you look at the equivalence point. If the equivalence point is 7, then what you have is strong, strong. But if the equivalence point, in the case of weak acid, strong base, the equivalence point will be above 7. And in the case of a weak base and a strong acid, the equivalence point will be below 7.